In 1994, Terry Sherman purchased a piece of land in eastern Utah to raise cattle on. By the very next year, the Sherman family would be haunted by an alien presence, witness mutilations, and be stalked by a creature from Navajo legends. This area would later become known as Skinwalker Ranch and is now considered one of the most paranormal places on Earth. The Shermans lived relatively peacefully for their first year on the ranch, but that was all about to change. Terry Sherman, his wife Gwen Sherman, and their child would all have their first brush with an extraterrestrial presence in 1995, and it started off relatively harmless with UFOs being spotted in the skies. But the encounters would soon turn into something much more sinister. The UFO sightings were just the beginning of what would become a bloody series of deaths and mutilations at Skinwalker Ranch. The most common UFO sightings by the family were small box-shaped vehicles that glowed white, an approximately 40-foot-long vehicle that hovered in the sky, and a mothership that was reported to be the size of several football fields. One particularly unnerving experience happened when Gwen Sherman was driving home late one night. She spotted lights in the sky in her rearview mirror. Gwen continued on, glancing back every now and then to figure out what was following her. Then the lights began to pick up speed. Gwen pushed the accelerator to the floor, trying to outrun the UFO that was chasing her. She whipped the car down the driveway toward her house when she stopped and looked in the sky behind her, and the lights were gone. As time went on, the paranormal experiences came out of the sky and landed much closer to home. While working on the ranch, the family found 3 locations where grass had been flattened into circles without any explanation as to why. Each instance was about 8 feet in diameter, and if the 3 circles were observed from above, they seemed to be laid out in a triangle. The family also found several holes that seemed to have appeared overnight. Each was 3 feet wide and a couple of feet deep. The Shermans didn't have an explanation for the strange circles they were encountering and had no idea what they meant. That was until the mutilations started occurring. As the paranormal experiences became more and more common, the Sherman family started to become worried. They tried recording and photographing the phenomena but had little success. Then things began to get much more creepy. One April night in 1995, Terry Sherman left his house to check on a cow that was days away from giving birth. As he approached the field, he noticed some strange glowing lights near where the pregnant cow was located. At the time, he thought the lights might have been from his neighbor's kids riding their four-wheelers around or an RV that had been parked in the field, but he couldn't have been more wrong. The lights began to rise 50 feet into the air. Terry ran toward the field, trying to get a better look at what the lights were. He reached the spot where the UFO had been moments before. It was there that Terry Sherman found the first mutilated cow on his ranch. The cow had a hole bored into the center of its left eye, but other than that, it seemed the dead cow was untouched. Upon further inspection, Terry found no blood seeping from the wound in the eye, or anywhere else on the cow's body for that matter. It was as if whatever killed the cow had sucked out its insides from the hole in its eyeball. Terry searched the surrounding area for footprints and signs of a predator but could find nothing. He believed whatever he had seen in the sky might have had something to do with the puncture wound and death of the cow. And this would not be the last instance of the Sherman cattle being targeted by something paranormal. Not long after this first mutilation, another cow was found with a hole in its left eye. However, whatever this cow had encountered had taken things a step further. Upon inspection, Terry Sherman found that there was also a 6-inch hole carved around the cow's rectum. This is when he noticed another connection between the 2 mutilated cows. They both had a chemical smell surrounding them, as if they'd been experimented on in a lab. As the year progressed, more cows disappeared, some without a trace. It was winter, and the Shermans were doing their rounds and couldn't locate one of their cows. There was snow on the field, so Terry followed hoofprints of the missing cow. The prints stopped at the edge of one of the fields near some trees, but the strange thing was there was no sign of what happened to the cow. It seemed as if the animal had been lifted right off the ground where the tracks stopped. Then Terry Sherman stood over the last set of prints and tilted his head back to look up. Above him there seemed to be a circular hole of broken branches leading through the tree canopy and into the sky above. It was as if something in the sky had blasted its way through the top of the tree to get to the cow below. The mysterious force had then picked the cow up off the ground and carried it away. At this point, the Shermans were really scared. If whatever was taking their cows decided to turn their attention on them, there would be nothing they could do to stop it. And the scariest part was, the worst was yet to come. A final dead cow was found by the Sherman's child. It laid in the snow not too far from where the other cow had seemed to be lifted off the ground. When the child got his father and they examined the body, a 6-inch wide, 18-inch deep hole was found in the backside of the animal. There was no blood or innards in the snow surrounding the corpse, just a circular hole that had been bored straight into the cow's rectum. When Terry took a moment to examine the area around him, he noticed the same chemical smell as with the previous cow mutilations. He looked up into the trees, and saw that the branches had been severed and twigs had fallen around the dead cow in a circular pattern. Authorities were brought to examine the mutilations, which were eventually chalked up to death by predatory animals. But the lack of blood and the strange holes bored into the cows did not seem to fit the profile of an animal attack. Many believe there was some type of extraterrestrial presence on the Sherman Ranch, but there may have been something else, something much worse. One final paranormal experience occurred in the Sherman family, and this time it scared them so badly they ended up selling their land. In fact, it was this experience that would eventually give the farm its current name, Skinwalker Ranch. It was late at night and Terry Sherman was checking on his livestock. He had brought his dogs with him, most likely because going anywhere on the ranch late at night was a little nerve-wracking. Suddenly, the dogs began to growl and yip. Terry pointed his flashlight in the direction the canines were looking. In the tree line, he could make out the shape of a creature. It looked like a wolf, but it was much too large. Terry estimated the creature to be 3 times the size of a normal wolf, with eyes that glowed blood red. Terry lifted the rifle he was carrying and shot 3 rounds to the animal. It was unfazed. The wolf-like creature glared at Terry and then disappeared into the tree line. The dogs barked wildly, but they did not pursue. It's believed that the creature wasn't an alien, a science experiment got wrong, or a mutant wolf, but something from ancient Native American lore. The creature that Terry Sherman saw that night on his ranch might have been a skinwalker. A skinwalker is a shape-shifting entity that comes from the legends of the Navajo people. It is interesting to note that although Skinwalker Ranch sits on land that once belonged to the Ute people, the Navajo Nation is nearby. In their legends, skinwalkers can shapeshift. They're also depicted as werewolf-like creatures, but can transform into anything they wish. There are commonalities between skinwalker sightings today and the Navajo legends of old. Although the skinwalker can shapeshift, the creature tends to be slightly deformed when it manifests itself. The skinwalker is also said to have red or orange eyes that pierce through the darkness. Both of these characteristics are reminiscent of the creature Terry Sherman saw the night he was out with his dogs. The Navajo skinwalkers don't necessarily need to be part wolf, but it's a common theme. The idea of a skinwalker itself is actually derived from the Navajo term Yi-na-lushi. This translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours. Some Navajo believe that skinwalkers are the evil children of a corrupted medicine man who abused the magic of his people. Others believe that people who have committed terrible crimes or taboos against the members of their tribe are turned into skinwalkers as punishment. There's no hard evidence to support the claims made by the Sherman family other than the reports on the mutilation of their livestock. But many believe there was a lot more going on at the Skinwalker Ranch than meets the eye. In fact, once the ranch was sold, more and more people came forward with accounts of paranormal experiences they had on or near the ranch. When researchers looked further into the paranormal activity in the area, they found it could be traced all the way back to the first European explorers in the region. It's claimed that in 1776, a Franciscan missionary named Sylvester Félix de Escalante spotted fireballs in the night sky when camped near Skinwalker Ranch. And native peoples have passed down oral histories of skinwalkers and paranormal entities going back to times long before Europeans ever arrived on the continent. It would seem there are a couple of different ideas on what has actually been witnessed at Skinwalker Ranch. Many in the area claim to have seen UFOs, but others claim there are creatures that don't seem to be extraterrestrial, but something much scarier and perhaps human-made. Eventually, the Shermans sold the ranch to Robert Bigelowit, who made his fortune in the real estate and hotel business. He was always interested in the paranormal, so he started the National Institute for Discovery Science. Basically, this was a privately funded research organization that conducted investigations on paranormal events, fringe science, and UFO sightings. Now that Bigelowit owned Skinwalker Ranch, he could send his investigators there to research the paranormal activity that was claimed to be occurring in the area. In March of 1997, one of the researchers working for the National Institute for Discovery Science spotted a large, deformed, human-looking creature in the trees on the ranch. This creature seemed to be watching the researchers. It had piercing yellow eyes that never blinked. And when one of the researchers shot at the creature with his rifle, it didn't seem to harm the thing, but it did scare it away. Upon investigating the area around the tree that the creature was spotted in, the team found a strange-looking footprint. They described the track as being a single large print in the snow with 2 sharp claws protruding from the rear. Their conclusion was that the prints almost looked like a bird of prey, maybe a raptor print, but huge, and from the depth of the print, from a very heavy creature. Paranormal investigations are still ongoing at Skinwalker Ranch and try to make sense of all the experiences people have had in the area over the years. There is no definitive evidence that the land there was visited by aliens, skinwalkers, or any other creatures, but investigators are still trying to prove that Skinwalker Ranch is one of the most paranormal places on Earth. Now watch Catholic Church Most Terrifying Ghost Stories, or watch Wartime Paranormal Sightings That Shocked Soldiers.